Thanks, John. So, talking about stress and anxiety, and I thought this was a Christian group that didn't have any stress or anxiety. So yeah, let's challenge a couple of those myths. One is that anxiety is this terrible beast of an enemy that has to be defeated. That's false. The other, that Christians are unusually protected from anxiety, I would argue, also false. But let's start with the beast. When early on in my career, I was supposed to give a parenting talk at a preschool, and I'm expecting this little preschool, maybe 5 parents sitting around, and we'll just chat. There were like 150 people in this room, and so I was thrown off. It's like, this is going to be a talk, not a chat. And I'm getting really nervous, and happily I had a jacket on to hide my sweaty underarms, and a nice big podium, more substantial than this, to hide behind. But I could not hide my dry mouth. And so the principal of this school, noticing that, walked out, came back, and held a glass of water for me. And I didn't take the water. And so it's, why would anybody with a dry mouth needing to give a talk not take the water? Because my hand was shaking so badly, I was sure I wouldn't be able to put it in my mouth. So I survived, and that's speech anxiety. So, on the list of anxieties, that's number 1. And number 2, death. So Seinfeld has this great line. He says, so that means at most funerals, people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. So yes, it's a beast, and in that case, I would have loved to have annihilated it, but here's where I'd like for you to participate. So for starters, can you put your fingers in those traps, and if there aren't enough around, empathize with those that have it? So can you tell me, and as you do, pull a little, tell me, how do you know when you're anxious? Give me some indicators. What tells you this is what I call anxiety?
Heartbeat's really fast.
Okay.
The hand shakes. Sweat.
Yeah, huh? Sweaty?
The dry mouth.
Yes.
It's shaky. My
Okay.
breathing's irregular.
All right. Did you have? Yeah, okay. And on the racing thoughts, yeah, so they're not just random thoughts, oh, what a pretty flower, what a great day we have. They're not those kinds of racing thoughts. They are all painful racing thoughts. Okay, so what I'd like to do now, if you can do 2 things at once, if you can look at that sheet that you have in front of you, let's keep those fingers tucked. I'd like you to just feel the tension of the fact that what we do is break out into 4 areas, the things that you're just describing. So at the bottom is physiology. That's what all of you started off with. So heart beating faster, breathing, dry mouth, sweaty, all of those things. That's what's going on in your body. You said racing thoughts, and they're going in this poisonous, toxic territory. We have emotions, and so we may say anxiety. I've learned to push people to not use that word, because sometimes it's more like fear or dread or panic. Sometimes it's frustration or embarrassment. So there's that collection of emotions, and then behaviors. Maybe you do nervous behaviors when you're anxious, or the classic, we avoid things because of anxiety. And all of these interact. So as you're feeling that tension, all of these, it's like I notice that my heart is beating a little faster. So my thought is, oh no, here comes anxiety. And then I get really scared. And then I set off that fight or flight response. So now I've got adrenaline rushing, and now that's bigger. And I'm trying desperately to control it, look like I'm okay when I'm not. So all of those are in this dynamic relationship. They affect each other, usually going in a really bad way. The anxiety tends to come for us in 2 waves in the usual anxious scenes. The first wave will be whatever is your whatever is your little weak spot. So maybe it's this funny feeling in your chest, Or maybe it is this thought that pops into your head, or an image that's going to come to your mind. Or maybe you just notice the emotion. But it starts as this little blip of something that you're not expecting right then. And then the second wave is all about our reaction to it, which is this, oh no, here it comes, this is going to be terrible. We have this response like, I shouldn't be feeling this right now, and so that really takes off. The thoughts can be this cascade of poisonous thoughts that go from this is really uncomfortable to this is catastrophic, and the consequences are going to be huge now. Something really bad is going to happen. I'm going to lose all respect that everybody has of me. And then it starts into self-judging, which is where Christians can be particularly vulnerable. I'm a bad Christian. I mean, how many times does the scriptures say, fear not? And I'm fearing all over the place right now. So there must be something really wrong with me as a Christian. So instead of being able to accept that I'm having a rough time, I'm now in a moral judgment, and I shouldn't be feeling this because of my walk with God. So I would say, if you just take the experience in itself, the worst thing anxiety can do is make you feel rotten for a while. You can't have a stroke from it, won't give you a heart attack. A lot of people will say, I'm going to go crazy. I can assure you, you don't go crazy from anxiety. You're going the opposite direction from anxiety. You're getting preoccupied with what's going on in your life, not disconnected from it. So there are no big risks here except feeling rotten for a while, unless the most critical behavior in this whole interaction is when we start avoiding things because of anxiety. Then the anxiety is deciding how big our life is, how small our life is. I can't go there. I can't be with this person. I can't have that experience. And once we give in to anxiety, that's when it can do its worst to us, when it can really impact how freely we can live our lives. So, the way out, what can you do in those responses? Well, the reason why I put this as a diamond is to get these two axes that you see. So, for emotions and physiology, that's the accept axis. There is no human capacity to change those. If you're scared, you're scared. And if someone says, don't be scared, I mean, they may as well say grow 3 inches. There's nothing you can do to will yourself to change your emotions or your physiology. So to be up in the middle of the night saying, I should be sleeping, give it up. You cannot directly change your physiology or your emotions. That's the accept axis. That's something you just need to accept. In the moment, I don't mean forever, but right then, that's what's going on. That's the way it's going to be. But your emotions and your physiology interact with thoughts and behaviors. That's the change axis. That's what you can do something about. So if you were to just take one thing from this talk about what you can do, I would suggest you hang on to the serenity prayer that will say, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, to change the things I can, and your sheet, if you take it with you, is the wisdom to know the difference. That is all we get to do. So if you come with acceptance to those anxiety experiences, you're already way ahead from those finger pulls. So acceptance is crucial, and serenity prayer just happens to be a nice way to do that. I would also, this one's a hard sell, but I would also tell you anxiety is not your enemy. Anxiety is your ally. It is the emotional equivalent to physical pain. And if you do not experience physical pain, you do terrible damage to your body because you don't know that your hand is on a skillet or something. So physical pain, we hate it, but it's our ally. The same is true with anxiety. It signals us, before maybe we're thoroughly catching it, there's something wrong here. There's something not quite right. And so the best is it signals you, and then you're able to make some adjustments. Sadly, like with pain, You can have anxiety about feeling anxiety. It's sort of like an alarm that gets stuck, and then we have to find another way out. But at least I would tell you, the goal of eliminating anxiety and being comfortable, that's not our primary goal. And it won't be, as I get there, our primary goal for our children. So anxiety is there to serve you. So one of the things we found very helpful is around anxiety, can you just trot around this diamond and just name the experience you're having like you did with me a minute ago. But in this way, try and fill in the other points of the diamond. So this is what my physiology does. Now, what are the thoughts? Okay, these are the particular quotes of the things I say to myself. You know, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to go crazy. I can't take this. Those would be the things we say to ourselves. And let's catch them. We've learned that those thoughts have less poisonous impact if we can catch them than if we let them run around in the back of our heads. So, can I catch the thoughts? Can I name the emotions? This is where it's useful to just go on the internet, get a list of emotions, because it's a better multiple choice question than a fill in the blanks question. So, if I have a list of them, I can say, yeah, I'm feeling some of this and this and this. So the ability to go beyond the word anxiety, can I name the exact emotion I'm having? And then behaviors, can I notice what I'm doing? And as I said, resist avoidance. That's a crucial one for us to pay attention to. So can you go around and name that experience? When people talk about anxiety and stress, they tend to focus on a situation. This scene, you know, I've got this test, I've got, you know, I don't know what gender my child is going to be. Things like that can be situational. And so you can have, we think we're having that situation and feeling this anxiety. So there are snakes on a plane, that's the situation, and this is the anxiety that I feel. The reality is that in between that situation and our emotions are these things we're telling ourselves about that. So another step you could take is to really, when you say, I'm scared about this situation, you know, fill in the blank, being able to push further and say, now, what am I saying to myself about that situation? Because that's making a big difference in the distress that I feel about it. So think of SET. That would be your acronym. Situation and emotion that you come up with pretty quickly, and thought, the part that we don't tend to go to. That's really powerful.
Say that again.
All right. Situation. So S-E-T. So situation. So, you know, I don't know the gender of the child I'm bearing. Emotion. What am I feeling about that? And then what am I saying to myself about that, the thought? So situation, emotion, and thought. So can I get the whole set of what I'm experiencing right now? Then let's talk about what can you do with behaviors and thoughts, because that's the only game in town. On behaviors, you've heard me say, press against avoidance. One of the additional problems about avoidance is that it's actually physiologically addicting. When you say no to something, oh, I'm going to have to go to LA and I hate the traffic and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. And then I say, I'm calling in and saying I'm not going to go. There is kind of this relief rush that comes with saying no to something. And you're doing drugs. You actually are having those natural mood elevators. So it's physiologically addicting, along with psychologically addicting. I've learned just to say no to things that scare me. And so the next scary thing I'm going to say no to. So it goes. And it's a con. It's like giving in to the bully. You're never going to be okay till you face the bully. So you just have to finally say, I'm going to be miserable, I think, but I'm going to go, and I'm going to do the whole set. I'm going to find the name of my emotion and the thoughts that I'm having at the time. Now, I do want to distinguish risk management and anxiety management. So just because something scares us doesn't mean we have to do it. So I don't like the idea of hang gliding. I don't have to choose to go hang gliding. That's just a risk I choose not to take. So avoidance in the face of risks That's prudent risk management, and that's an okay thing to do. It's sometimes, though, we con ourselves into saying that our car is going to be in an accident on the freeway. That's the real reason why I'm not going. Or the classic, which is really fun, I'm not going to fly east because the plane might crash, so I'm going to get in a car and drive to the East Coast, significantly raising my risk, but reducing my anxiety. And so avoidance in the face of prudent risk is okay, and I would suggest that you, if you're not sure, you do that away from the scary scene, and you do it with a loved one, someone in your life that can kind of think about this with you. Is this really that you're avoiding a risk in your life, or is this about not being anxious? Because if you're avoiding because of anxiety, it's going to get bigger and worse. Lifestyle changes are crucial. If someone said, I want to reduce the intrusion of anxiety in my life, but I'm only going to change one thing, doc, give me your best shot, I would say, getting exercise. Get your heart rate up on a regular basis. People that wind up getting that conditioning, and I mean aerobic exercise, getting that conditioning, they get all the physiological benefits we know about. But then we study the substances in their blood, and they wind up having the same stress response. That is, they don't have as big a response, and it resolves quickly, like climbing a flight of stairs when you're in shape, versus it gets really big and takes forever to go down if you're doing that same flight of stairs out of shape. So we have psychological benefits from the physiology changes from getting exercise. So get your heart rate up. It's a practical way that you could respond to anxiety. And the rest of healthcare, nutrition, I'll say it, sleep. See if you can manage things so you can get sleep. Then in the scene, so that's a lifestyle behavior change. In the scene, we've learned, can you focus on your breathing? If you're, at this party and you're really uncomfortable, can you stop and just pay attention to slowing down your breathing? It tends to go faster if you let it go on autopilot. Can you focus on letting muscles relax? We've learned that you can't be deeply relaxed and acutely anxious. They're incompatible. So if you can train yourself to relax, you're actually putting a bit of a leash on how far the anxiety will go. So deeply relaxing muscles, and in the scene, that just means, can I stop and let my shoulders come down? Some find it better to tense and relax your muscles, which is also a good step. So take, maybe to not be too obvious, so I'm not going to do fists, but I can tighten a lot of my body right now and hold that for 10 seconds and then let go. It sort of exhausts the muscles, it exaggerates the tension, and it focuses on what exactly is going on in my body right now. So that's something you can do in the scene. Then on coping thoughts, that's the other change axis. For starters, don't believe everything you think. You've got a lot of thoughts that actually are just thoughts. And when it comes to saying, I think I'm going to win the lottery, we're pretty quick at saying, that's wishful thinking, that's probably not going to happen. But when I say, I'm going to fail and people are going to just ridicule me, that one I believe. But they're both thoughts. They're both things that I'm saying to myself. So the early cognitive psychologist, the Apostle Paul, says to hold your thoughts captive. So we want to hold our thoughts captive, hold them out to the light and say, how much do I believe this? So can I, lifestyle-wise, just not let my thoughts run wherever they run? I want to start harnessing and catching them and checking them against the truth. Then, in the scene, when you're anxious, one of the things you might do is recall the dynamics of that finger lock. Because if you catch the notion, wait a second, I'm in autopilot doing things that are making my symptoms worse, like the harder I pull, the more stuck I am, that concept can encourage acceptance. Okay, whatever it is, let me just accept I'm here. I'm feeling anxious, this is what's going on for me. So we look for some analogy that helps come up with acceptance, and I would invite you to use pulling your fingers as an example to interrupt the autopilot places where your thoughts and your responses are going to go. It's also good to memorize something reassuring and put your head there. So if you have a passage of Scripture, if there are words to a song, a prayer, a speech, and I'll say there are two ways that can be useful. One is that it's reminding you of a truth that you're temporarily forgetting. So to have some sense of hope and reassurance, I'm just going to say that to myself. I'm going to rehearse it. Better, if the scene allows it, is to be memorizing something new that you don't know completely. You have it on your phone or a flashcard or something. Because it takes so much mental energy to memorize something, you're starving the fuel of the toxic thoughts, the places they want to go. There's not enough brain power to feed them and feed that thing you're memorizing. So it's even, the more demanding the cognitive task, the more helpful it is in this case. So memorizing something new could be a practical thing you could do in the scene. So now I'd like you to put your finger locks back on, if you would, because let's take the same concept, and now let's picture you notice your child looking nervous, and you get nervous about them being nervous, and your heart's beating faster, and you see them starting to cry, and you have this urgent sense of, I need to do something, I've got to solve this. So once again, we get stuck. So there's this need to get control, and the reality that we don't know what to do. And we're not exactly sure how we can help. And the urgency to do something will tend to make it worse. So I fully understand that. We certainly carried that with our kids when they were feeling anxious about something. So let's talk about what you can do with that. One of them is that you can model your own anxiety coping. There's more caught than taught in parenting. They're watching you, but giving them unwanted advice, that doesn't tend to go so well. If they're not asking for your advice, you're probably not going to get very far offering your advice. But if they watch you and you're willing to sort of show on yourself that you're feeling some anxiety, they're going to watch you carefully. What are you doing with that? And if they watch you taking a breath, maybe saying, I'm kind of feeling anxious right now, you're going to go miles in parenting kids for coping with anxiety because you're normalizing it. Where if you never show that, they get the belief that being a Christian adult means you never have anxiety and you're never depressed and you're never upset and frustrated. So you are telling on yourself by just modeling your own coping with anxiety. Then, let's see, one of the parts that we have learned can help beyond that when you actually want to intervene is the temptation for kids and us, if we're praying about our anxiety, is take it away. Our pleading, make it gone. And that's not the way God wired us, and that's probably not the way the scene's going to get resolved. So instead, one of the ways to think about that prayer differently is to claim God's presence in the anxiety. Can you be present in the storm? Peter steps out of the boat, and is God present in the storm rather than what ultimately happens, let me plop you back in the boat. So if you're modeling and you encourage for your kids God's presence, and I would add your presence, your ability to empathize with the emotion is really powerful. And we can have a rough time with that. It's like, I know they're scared, but I don't want to say scared because that's only going to make them more scared, so we've got to pretend like this isn't happening. No, actually much more helpful is to say, you look scared. How are you feeling? And be able to empathize. That does sound kind of scary, the way you're describing that. So we can empathize with the emotion. And one of the fascinating things we've learned, they're doing all of these functional MRI studies where they put people in an MRI and then they stress them out and do all sorts of things to them. When they stress people out and they're alone in the MRI, they have all these areas of the brain lighting up, showing all the distress. When they have the open MRI and they have a loved one holding the hand of the person in the MRI, it radically reduces the intensity of that experience. The brain is lighting up less because of that presence. So you can be an assurance to your children that I understand that, I feel it too, this is the name, it seems, of the feeling you're having, any other feelings that you have, and I'm here with you. Rather than their fear, you're going to judge me for that. So to be able to have empathy for the experience that they're having, then I would say how to carefully resist avoidance. They are going to say, I don't want to go to that sleepover. I don't want to go to that camp. I don't want to go down the street. And so you'll have that challenge of how do I can't force them to do something. Shoving them into the party is not going to go well. I don't know, maybe you've had that experience, I guess if you sneak out quick enough. But typically forcing them isn't going to do it. So what I encourage parents to do is to look for ways to resist rewarding their avoidance. So I was seeing a boy who was on home hospital, allowed to not go to school and be at home for the anxiety that he had, stress. He was having physiological symptoms of this, but there was a fair amount of anxiety at the core of that. So what the parents were doing was saying, okay, and both of them worked, they would go off to work, and the boy would have Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This was like, this is great. And so they wind up getting rewarded for that avoidance. And so I had to say to the parents, okay, it's not going to be wise to force your son to go, but let's make home less fun. So we worked on all these ways, including there's a lock. You can take a TV out of the wall, lock it, and turn a key, and that cannot plug in the wall anymore. So they had to do that level. And by the way, this kid was out in the garage pounding on that lock, trying to get the TV to plug in. So we can make it less rewarding. And you might think about, if you're not going to go there, then it's going to be boring here. We're not going to have this be the fun place to have as an alternative. So finding out a way to not encourage the avoidance is about as far as we get. I would say ultimately with children's anxiety, it can be true that seeing someone as a family, and I would encourage that instead of having the child see someone alone, to talk about all of the things, all the family systems aspects about anxiety. And then the truth is, in some cases, in extreme cases, medicine can be helpful. And as long as that's a part of an overall plan, that might be useful. So I'm about at stopping time, I think, and you have some questions at the table. Is that the right thing to do, Renee? Do I walk away?
Well, we could maybe take some questions, maybe 5 minutes or so, if anybody
Okay.
has something specific.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you distinguish, I'm sure it's case by case, but between normative childhood experience of the world? My son was up at 2 in the morning, afraid or anxious, said he was lonely, and I suppose more debilitating anxiety.
Yeah. The reality is, I fully understand that behind that is, and what do I do with that distinction? Because we don't want to just label it, this is usual and that's debilitating. So it all have to do with, and what would we do differently as we respond? I would say, for starters, everybody gets anxious. So it's a normalizing thing that we can have that says whether you're just up at 2 in the morning occasionally, or regularly feeling anxious, ultimately it's just, these are the steps. Let's make sure that we're doing them. And then if the anxiety is intruding so much that we're not able to fully engage life, then maybe we should get some help and talk about that. But I'd be reluctant to say that's mild anxiety, let's just ignore that. Because I think kids that have the notion that this is the experience they're having, and they can name that, and they've got tools to do something about that, they're going to emerge in the world at a stronger, better place, whether it was from mild anxiety or really significant anxiety. So I would say it's still useful to talk to your kids about anxiety. But if you mean by that, when would you seek help? I would start with, let's do the things that we can do, some of the things I'm talking about, and then maybe talk about seeing someone to help have them engage. Certainly I would look, one of the things that's interesting is kids may behave one way in one circle, like at home, and then you go and talk to their teacher, and they're actually doing fine there. So some things become situational, and so it'd be a good idea to find out, from the person running the preschool, how's this happening versus what you see other kids doing? If kids go to camp and they're calling, saying, take me home, I want to get out of here, being able to check with the staff there. Okay, how are you able to manage what's happening for this child? So I would just say, I could give you a list of diagnoses, check off, but I think the part would be, what do you do with it anyway? And that would be, let's take these steps as best we can. Is that okay? I'm kind of bailing out on the question. And maybe before you ask Ruth, one of the other things I wanted to highlight is that for your kids, having them be as comfortable as possible is not a good goal. It's not a good goal for most of life. So when your mindset is, I want to get my child as comfortable as possible right now, you're sabotaging them. So around this anxiety, what we're trying to do is say, okay, you're anxious, now what? Let's grow your tolerance. This is how you cope. This is how you engage. Because there are going to be a lot more scary things in your future that you're going to have to face. Yeah, Ruth.
I really liked you talking about the presence of God and how we can model that for our kids. And I was thinking that for us to believe that the Holy Spirit is powerful in our life, we can teach that to our children and pray for the gifts of the Spirit. And one of them is peace. Now, I'm not saying we should try and take away anything that you've said, but I think to add that really in a strong way, because children just soak it in. If they see you believing in the power of the Holy Spirit, they will too, and it will be effective.
Right.
To a good degree.
And the strongest that we can claim in these scenes is God's presence. That is absolute. If he's going to miraculously intervene and reduce the nervous feeling we have right now, we're not all the way clear about that. He might, but we're assured that he's present, he's with us, and as we claim that, it's like holding the hand of the person in the MRI. Yeah.
So when do you know that the child is actually anxious and not just manipulating you?
Yeah. You read their minds. Yeah, I think you're right. It can be. I'm just, I'm too sick to do this. I'm just not want to do that. Yeah, we certainly had those challenges of discerning. I guess I would be looking for patterns. Is this a one-off, or is there a pattern of these same things? When you empathize instead of solving it, I mean, if they're trying to manipulate, and all you're doing is saying, wow, that sounds really scary, and we're still going to go. They will get the notion that there's no relief, there's no escape hatch by complaining. There's one more question over here.
In general, I've seen a lot of trending of lot more anxiety in young adults, kids, happening in the last 5-10 years that I've been paying attention. Is there something that's trending in society or the way that we're doing things that like are intentional to not do that? I mean, these are great things.
Yeah.
Is it because as a society we're getting more stressed out and our kids are copying that, or, you know, like,
Yeah.
I just know a lot of people with anxiety attacks and like extreme feelings that I don't remember growing up with kids reacting that way. You know, there was like 1 in 20 of friends I grew up with feeling that way, and now I know 20 kids that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I know that there are people that will just choose that their home is going to be radically different. We are going to be unplugged and we're going to be de-stressed. And so I think, yes, it's true that, you know, while I was waiting to talk to you, I'm answering some emails from my staff. And so I've got a lot of things going on, and we do know that that can raise our stress level. The other side is that stress is actually pretty healthy for us in a lot of ways. There's a lot that's good about having stress in our life, depending on how we frame it. So we do see that yes, our society is faster paced and there are more demands, and the changes keep happening faster, and that's going to cause stress and anxiety. The anxiety part, though, will be, and what am I saying to myself about not being able to get my, you know, I was going to say VCR to show how old I am. So how do I get this electronic piece of equipment to do what it's supposed to do? So we can. The anxious part would still be, how do I respond to that? We can live fully in this high-tech world and actually thrive. It can be okay for us. So I don't think that it's poison in and of itself. It's what do we do with that?
Engagement with the emotion.
And my framing it. How do I respond to it? That's not to say some people are choosing a quite different lifestyle, and if that works for them, great. I do have some concern about what that does for their children and the world that they're going to go into. How well prepared are they? You know, like the kids that don't have any immunity because they were so well protected, they're getting sick in adulthood. So that stuff can happen with stress too. I also find that there are so many cool things that are happening about ways people are connecting that they weren't connecting before. So I'm not that opposed to the way society changes. That's just continues to happen. I think we do better accommodating that than resisting it. But yes, there are things that people can do. You know, some will say, I don't look at my phone after this time, or we don't have the internet at home, or something else, and that could well be very helpful.
May I add one thing? This is for
Really, really quick.
Yeah, for older kids, but I found that some of the kids that are having some difficulty at school, that they will manage at school just fine, and then they come home and fall apart. And I feel that in those incidents, most of the time it's safer at home. They don't feel safe to fall apart at school, but at home they do. So that's another area to look at if you're experiencing it.
Especially if you think they've been like this all day long, and it's totally false. They were coping there. But yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you.
We have some questions on your table, so we have about 25 minutes to talk about this.